Okay, good morning everyone, and good morning to our viewers. We're doing a beginner Gemara class, and the objective is operating under the assumption that you've never learned any Gemara before. I want to make you comfortable with it, comfortable enough so that you can pick up at the end of this class. I'm hopeful, I believe that you will. You'll be able to pick up an Artscroll Gemara, and reading through their introduction and the way they work the text, be able to learn yourself and assist your kids with their homework, if that's the objective, or just to become more fluent in Gemara. I've also found, believe it or not, that many people who went to yeshiva themselves for many years, weren't taught the fundamentals of Gemara, how they work. They were taught Gemara, but not a lot of the background information, which is why we created this Gemara book, which walks you through the background to Gemara, where it came from, what's the history, and then I'll walk you through the actual, a few words in a Mishnah. Okay, so this handout has, please just check that you have the correct pages. We have our agenda, that's page number 1. Okay, page number 2 and 3 are actual pages of a Hebrew text of an Artscroll Gemara. Copy this page with their permission, and if you look at the first page of the side should have a little black box that says right here, Masnisin, okay, Mem Saf Nun, okay, and the other side is the English text of that page. Then there are 2 pages with the handout of our amazing star 4th grade Rebbe in our yeshiva, who created his own material to help his students with acquiring Mishnah. So those are pages 4 and 5, and page number 6 is a clip from the New York Times. Oh, thank you so much, Rabbi. Thank you. We're to all y'all out there. We're here in Plano, Texas. I had the most beautiful Shabbos. Strongly recommend you come here for a visit or live here, right, Rabbi?
Don't invite just anybody. Don't invite just anyone to live here.
Don't just invite anyone. Okay, well, there's a selection committee, right? Ah, yeah. Okay. If you pass through the selection committee, you can come here. We really had a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos together. Okay, so let's talk about how this all works. Guys, could you take the handouts off this in case somebody pushes the thing just very gently? I don't want anyone touching the beamer because okay, just there. Take the other one off and just put it in the back somewhere. Thank you so much. It's in a very precarious state. Nobody sneeze around the beamer, please. Okay, so let's go. So so here's the issue. The understanding is that the way it works is we have our tradition, the body of Torah knowledge, is divided into 2 parts. There's the Torah Shebiksav, the written Torah, which includes the 5 books of Chumash, includes all of Navi, the prophets, and Ksuvim, which are Megillos and some other things like that. So we call that Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, and that is referred to as the written Torah. Okay, Torah Shebiksav. Mishnah and Gemara are called Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah. Now, just to start filtering through the confusion, the oral Torah, at some point in our history, was actually written down. So, when people say, again, this is why you need a script. So when people say, okay, we're learning Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, what do you mean oral Torah? It's written down, just like the Mishnah is, just like the Chumash is. So that's what we're going to talk about, how the history of how that came and what that was about. Just a quick story. One of the most powerful transformational moments in my life, as my 15 years of teaching Gemara to 8th grade students, many of whom, many years, I taught the weakest track in the school, and the kids were just so fed up with Gemara by the time they got to my class. They had been allegedly learning it for 3 years, for 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, and they came to my class so frustrated, and I developed, not as sophisticated, of course, but in my mid-20s, after doing this for a couple of years, I made some sort of program to introduce kids to Gemara, because I realized that these kids didn't have this background that you're all here to learn. My students who've been in yeshiva all their life, they started by learning Gemara, but not telling them this stuff. So we created this program. But one of the transformational moments was I was driving. There were 5 fellows when I moved to Monsey 30 years ago. There were 5 friends, one friend of mine and some colleagues of his that were in the carpet business. Okay, they were in the floor covering, whatever, all related floor covering business. There was a big conference in Atlanta Sunday morning, and these guys wanted to get to the conference and stay with the families for Shabbat, for Shabbos. So my friend asked me, he was concerned that it was the last flight out, Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, was so close to Shabbos that they were worried that even if they had a cab, putting the luggage in would be too much. That's how close the timing was. So basically, he asked me, "Can I back up? Can you put your car, back it up in your car? We'll fill up in your driveway. We'll fill up all the luggage. Motzei Shabbos, we're going to daven, say Havdalah, jump in the car, out." So that's what we did. So I was driving to the airport. Now get it, one guy, one yeshiva guy, and 5 carpet guys. So what were they talking about in the car?
Yeshiva stuff.
Carpet stuff. Because I got 5 carpet guys, right? They're not interested in my what I'm doing in yeshiva. So it was absolutely hysterical. I sat quietly the whole time and listening. I was just driving, and these guys were making carpet jokes, and we're making carpet statements, and we're telling each other about this new carpet, and laughing and giggling. Really interested. And the guy say, "Ha ha ha! You know, I had Joey over at the job. He put a 64x3. Ha ha ha! He put the wrong nail in. I don't know what they were talking about." Everybody cracks up. 45 minutes. I sat there. I had no idea what they were talking about. And we pulled into the outer ring of the Newark airport. I said, "Okay, now, all y'all, quiet down, listen to me now." I said, "I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Now I know what my students feel like. Sitting in a Talmud class, not having any idea of what I'm talking about, watching people enjoy the lesson, and wow, look at Rebbe said such a good, look at that, you know, elbowing each other and talking about it, and it's flying." I said, "I will never, ever, ever go in front of a classroom and not explain every single word of the text and every piece of background." And that was really how this booklet came about, saying, what does a beginner who doesn't know any Gemara, what assumptions are we making when even Artscroll, the Artscroll book was made with certain assumptions that you would know, like it starts on the 3rd floor. So right now we're getting in on the ground level, okay? Excuse me. So let's work our way through the handout. So thinking about a job interview, okay? If Rabbi Zekan was looking for someone to answer the phones in the office, to work in the office, or someone to run the daycare on Shabbos. So during the job interview, he's not going to tell them every single detail of what their job entails, like that when it starts and when it ends, how many children are going to be there, and what I want you to do with them exactly. He's going to do a big picture. He's going to say, "Listen, you know, I want these when the kids are here, I want them supervised. I want it to be interesting. I want them to allow their parents to pray without being disturbed." And they'll discuss the details later. So that's really what the Torah is like. When the Torah is really big picture. So if you open up a Chumash, all of the complicated rules of Tefillin, let's say, or Shabbos, are just a few verses. Zachar es Yom HaShabbos l'kadsho. Remember the day of Shabbos and keep it holy. You work for 6 days, 7th day you rest. That's it. So how did we get all this stuff about carrying and cooking? And so that was all the oral Torah. Okay, so Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up for 40 days to receive the Torah, the oral tradition was taught to him, and he it went from Rebbe to student throughout that chain of tradition. Please open your booklets. These if they ever have a Hachana booklet, if you don't, there are a few extras there. Please don't touch the bima. Don't touch the bima. Okay, please. Somebody's got an extra one. They should be run by my chair, or maybe in the back, or if not, I'll ask some couples who are here together to share. I got one extra one here. Okay, take the binder one. Not everything is there. Okay, so we're gonna work our way. Here, you got one right there. There you go. Okay, so if you this this booklet is going to walk you through basically everything I'm telling you now. So if you took to page 4, again, I'm not going to elaborate on it. You can take it home and read it. This is basically talks, pages 4 and 5. It's divided into a textbook. It's made in a textbook, and it's divided into lessons with review questions. So the Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh, again, I'm at number 2 in the agenda items on the cover, goes through the oral Torah and the difference between Torah Shebiksav, the written Torah, and Torah Shebal Peh, the oral Torah. So the written Torah says, keep the day of Shabbos and make it holy, and the oral Torah tells everything about it. There's 39 categories of work on Shabbos and everything that relates to that. When exactly Shabbos starts, when it ends, all of that was conveyed in the oral Torah. Now, if you turn ahead to lesson 2, pages 8 and 9, talk about how the tradition was given from Rebbe to Talmud. And it was really, by the way, that was really part of the experience, was not only receiving this knowledge, but developing a relationship with a teacher that you'd be able to go and ask questions to. So you'd have, as they say today, the vernacular, you'd say, to have tech support, right? Part of the system of oral Torah that it was given from Rebbe to student was not only so it saved money on paper, which, 1,000 years ago was a big deal, right? They didn't have paper. It was, ink and parchment. But it was really to give to have that relationship with tech support for Torah learning. And it was built in, and it went on as follows. Now, at the bottom of page 9, if you look in the following generations, okay, the page numbers we're doing off the booklet, the Jews, as we know, our history was filled with a lot of churn, a lot of movement, and people going back and forth, and destruction and rebuilding, and during this time, that tradition, that link between Rebbe and Talmud, between teacher and student, was getting frayed, and some of that knowledge was forgotten. So turn to page 12 and 13. So Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, which he's referred to as Rebbe, he came along and said, look, we're going to have to change the rules built into the Torah, built into the tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu throughout our generations. The rabbis of the leading scholars of the day were given license to make changes as necessary in order to accommodate the realities of the time. So even though there was a prohibition on transcribing the oral Torah, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the bold and courageous move, and he said, if we don't transcribe this, it will not survive the exile that we have. People over, as opposed to being in Jerusalem and the main cities in Israel, all of a sudden they were all, in Babylon and other places and Persia. So he made this system where the Torah was written down for the first time. So that's this confusing notion of a Torah Shebal Peh, the oral Torah written down, really started with this. And similar to the way we design, have our folders on our computers, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and his group took this vast body of information that was transmitted orally and now had to put it into buckets, folders. So you're an attorney, right? Make nice, organized file folders. So I wasn't really good at that. I wasn't good at keeping notes and stuff. I'm still not good at file. Thank God, my wife is great at that. So that organization was never my strong suit. So if you look at the on page 13, that little box, you see it says Zrayim Mayed Nashim. Okay, the halachos of planting. If you're not familiar with Hebrew words, halachos mean I'll try to not do carpet on you. So halachos means the Jewish law of planting and growing food. So what they did is Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rebbe, we'll just call him Rebbe from now on, took this vast body of knowledge and made 6 buckets and put the learnings, the teachings in there. Anything related to planting and growing food, which included taking Meiser, which was 1/10, and giving it to the poor. Jews were instructed to put away, leave a portion of the field unharvested for the poor, and other rules of the like, that all went in Zroyim. Zera means a seed, so that was Zroyim, plural is Zroyim. Moed, like Chal Chol Moed, Moed means a Yom Tov, a Chag. So any laws of Shabbos and Yom Tov would go in that box. Nashim, meaning women, their wives, or well, Nashim was women, I guess, was rules of marriage, divorce, other things like that. Nezikin, Nezek means a damage. So tort law, all the laws of Aksan, which we're going to talk about later, went into this category of Nezikin. Kachim were things that related Kodesh, the holy, refers to the temple, Beis HaMikdash, so that all went in that space. And Taharos, the last one, were in Tum and Tahara. Okay, so if you wanted, and obviously once you have them in these buckets, take, let's say, Moed, which is probably what we're most familiar with as holidays. So that bucket was just like your folders on a computer. You have subfolders. It was divided into subfolders of the different chagim, the different holidays. So if you went to the bookshelf and you looked for Mishnayos, if you wanted to know the laws of Yom Kippur, you would pull out a volume called Moed, and usually most printed Mishnah, the way it's done with the printers today, usually there's 2 volumes for each one of the Siddharim, of one of these orders, so to speak, these big buckets. And they're each divided in 2, so a typical set of Mishnah would have 12 volumes. Now some of them actually small, they do them differently, but that's typically what you'll find in most Judaica stores, or so you'll pull out a Moed, you look through Moed Aleph, and Moed Beis, Moed A, and Moed B, and you look around for the laws of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is actually referred to as Yuma. Yom means a day. The day. The day of the year is the day of the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur. So again, if you wanted to look at for the laws of Yom Kippur, you would pick out a Moed. Going through Moed, you would see Shabbos, the laws of Shabbat. You would see Eruvin, the laws of an Eruv. How does it? I love this. I live in South Eruv, right? That's it. Like, what are we in North Eruv? No, this is Plano. In between, I felt like the carpet guy, right? The kids are telling me, "Oh, I live in South Eruv." What's a South Eruv? South Eruv is Dallas. Okay, but why isn't this North Eruv? No, because in between there's what do you call it? What? Far North, North Dallas. Then there's Far North Dallas, and I hear people are moving to Far North Plano. All right, whatever. A lot of oral Torah here, right? Look at that, right? So, what'd you say? Oklahoma. So, we also have in our culture this business of, written Torah and oral Torah. I'll never forget the first time I sat in on a recovery meeting. I do a lot of work with recovering alcoholics and other people. My wife and I have been volunteering the last 6-7 years at retreats, at holiday retreats for weekend Shabbos retreats and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And the first time I sat in on a meeting, everybody gets up and talks. Hi, I'm Yakov Horowitz. I'm an alcoholic, and talk about whatever they talk about. And I had a comment to make, and I said something, and it's like I just got tasered. Like everybody, whoa! There's a thing called cross-talking. You're not supposed to talk on top of what somebody. Like there are internal rules. That's really what we're here for. You're here to learn and I didn't know the internal rules that this was a no-no. So that's what this is all about. It's about teaching you. It's not scary. Once you get it, you'll see. Just pick up a Gemara. You'll be able to do this on your own. That's the idea behind it. I'm just giving you a little bit of the backstory here. Okay, so if you wanted the laws of human, you would open up a Mishnayos Moed Aleph, and you would look through the pages, and you would see Shabbos, Eruvin, Pesach. It's called Pesachim. Sometimes you have to look. It's a bigger word. It's a complex word. And you might not be familiar with, let's say, Yom is a little bit of a different word, but you see Yom, Pesachim is laws about Pesach, Sukkos, which you, okay, so that's, if you looked for that, you would find that in a subsection, and then each section is divided into chapters, and just like a book, really, like divided into sections and chapters. So if you wanted to find, I'm going to be learning with you a Mishnah in Yuma. We're going to be doing that soon, which is about Yom Kippur. And it's going, let's say, I think it's in Perik, let's say Perik Gimel, the third chapter, the third section, verse or Mishnah Beis. That's how you would look at it. So what if you see them in English, if it's referenced, if you go online and you see a reference to Mishnah, it'll say something like, it won't say which Seder, it won't say that it's in Moed. It'll usually say Tractate or Masechta Yuma. It'll say 3.4. So that means Perik, it's in Yuma. Now, I guess there's an expectation that you know that it's in Moed. And then it'll say 3:4. That means it's in the third Perik, the third chapter, and it's verse or Mishnah 4. So that's the reference system. It's usually in Hebrew or in English. If you get stuck and you don't know what Seder, it's in, just Google online. There's 100 different references. You just look what Seder is Yoma in. You should find that right away where that is. Okay. So let's move on now, and I'm just going to do Daf, and then we're actually going to start. We're going to start learning just one piece of Mishnah as an illustrative section. Okay, we're going to skip again. I invite you to look at the lesson we're skipping. You have these booklets home. Take them home with you and review them. Now what we're going to do now is go through this. This lesson 5, it's page 20 and 21. This really is a little bit confusing, so I'm going to try to walk you through it. And again, spend some time. You can look it over afterwards. The page, the way the Gemara is laid out, requires a little bit of GPS here. You need little ways to get around this. So I'm going to try to give it to you quickly. The pages are, again, here on the side you have the lesson are talked about. So in a Gemara, a daf or a blat refers to two sides of a page. Okay, so this handout here, you have this actually be a good way to illustrate this. Okay, so this handout, the way you got it in order, so this would be page 1, side 1. This blank page is page 1, side 2. This is page 2, side 1, right? And this is page 2, side 2. This is how Gemara works. So when you refer to a Gemara, it will say Daf 21, or in Hebrew, Daf Chaf Aleph, Amud Beis, side 2. So if you look here, so take a look at the booklet here. If you look at the booklet on top of on page 20, this here in the corner, you see on top over here, it says Chaf Aleph. You see my finger is here on that page. It's page 20 in the booklet. That notation on the upper side, the upper left side, is Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. That means page 21, side 1. That's how it's referred to in the literature, generally speaking. The second side is the previous page. If you look at page 21, again, it's right to left, so it's back. The order is reversed, but that will be Chaf Amud Beis, the previous page. Okay, right here. If you look on page 21 of the booklet, it says Chaf. You see the Chaf there with 2 dots. So it's page. Since this page, the next page, so to speak, is 21a. So this is going to be 20b. Now, after we went to publication, we realized to make it fair, we were confused because some of the books, instead of having Chaf Amud Beis, have a number system, which really makes it more confusing. So I wrote page 40 just to realize that sometimes, depending on how the printer laid it out, sometimes there's a number for that. But you won't find this number in any reference. You will not find this number 40 listed. It's only listed either when a rabbi gives up and gives a class, or if anything like that goes on, you will not hear that. Look to page 40. It'll be Chaf Amud Beis. That's what carpet salesmen, folks in the carpet business, they'll say Chaf Amud Beis. Okay? so that's basically how it is. Now, there wasn't a firm rule as to how these words should be on a page. Like how pagination was not set out. There's no rules that it has to be this way. But in the various versions, if you go to a library, you go online and you look for old versions of Talmud, you'll find them looking very different than this. The city of Vilna, a long time, probably 200 years ago, I don't know the exact date of that, they set up this page like this. So again, I'm looking at page 20. Again, you look at the booklet for more, but basically where my finger is, this here in the middle is the Talmud. Okay, right here, this is the Gemara. The inside page is Rashi's commentary. So it's not left or right. In other words, if here are two pages, it's going to be the two middle ones. Rashi, sorry to say it like a horse racing thing, Rashi had the inside track because he was the most elementary of commentaries, and they call him the mother of all commentaries. So Rashi is an acronym. See, I did the carpet thing. Rashi is an acronym for Rabbi Shimon Yitzchaki. Okay, many times people were known by the name and their father's name. So his father's name was Yitzchak. Rabbi Shimon Yitzchaki is the acronym for Rashi. So Rashi got the inside track. And the outside track here are the Tosfos. The word Yosef means to add. Mosif. Musaf is an additional prayer for Shabbos. So the Tosfos added to Rashi's commentary. Sometimes they just provide more color to the canvas, and they'll bring in some other learning and teaching and how it fits in. Very often, Tosfos will argue with Rashi and take him to task for various points. So happens that many of the Tosfos was not one person. They were written by a group of people. Rashi lived in France, and many of the Balei Tosfos, the folks who made the Tosfos, were Rashi's grandchildren, who respectfully, see, nothing changes, right? Nothing changes. You say something, the grandkids got something else to say, okay? Just that what they weren't arguing about cell phones and other stuff, they were just arguing about Talmud. So Rashi would write something, and writing in very reverent terms, they would say, Rebbe said this, but there's a different Gemara elsewhere that argues with this. Okay, there's more on the page. I'm going to leave it at this. I won't confuse you any further. On the extreme right and left sides, there are footnotes to where you can find this in the Rambam, in Maimonides' commentary. And there are, actually on the inside, there were Haggais. Because this was transmitted by writing without printing press, from Rebbe's time, there were invariably changes. Or, they were playing telephone by writing. So they would come along and say, this word is wrong, and we generally accept the tradition was never to change the text, but to put it on, not because if we change the text, then anybody who had commentaries would change the text. So it was basically accepted that leave the text as is and comments on the side. That was accepted throughout the generations. So because this page of this Vilna Shas, the Shas stands for Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, means that we call all of the Gemaras together are referred to as Shas. Really, Shas would technically be Mishnah. The 6 Siddharim, the 6 orders are referred to as Shas. Okay, so because this Vilna Shas was pleasing to the eye and people found it easy to navigate, and arbitrarily all the printers after that used this because so much involves memory. And so much of the footnoting of the commentaries and teachers to students would put Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Beis. So if you messed up the pagination, okay, and it also helps the memory. It's this line. So typically when a Rebbe, a teacher will give a shiur, will give class, he'll say, okay, we're on Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, 15 lines from the top. That's usually how it's referred to. Or 3 lines from the wide line start. That's usually how a teacher will refer to that when going. Okay? Okay, folks. You know everything you need to know. Let's just go to the Gemara. Now, go to your handout, please. And we're going to go to a page of Gemara. There's really one other thing that you need here. And that's what we're going to do now. And that is I call it. I used to call it to my students. I used to call it the whispers, because there's inside information. Because again, this is the complexity of Gemara. The assumption is when you pick up a Gemara that you're on the third floor. So they'll say things like, okay, on that day, Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol, high priest, did the following. And the assumption is that you know a lot of things, but if you're a beginner, you need the background information. So Artscroll came up with this cute idea, a really good idea. If you turn to this, again, this is what we're up now. If you just flip the page quickly and look at the back, you see where it says Mishnah here. See, it's about a third of the way down the page. Artscroll came up with this idea that all the words that are a literal translation of the text are in bold, and the ones that are in the lighter font are the whispers. I call them whispers because, like, if you want to, I used to tell my students, like, you need somebody next to you whispering in your ear and telling you what the background information is. So that Artscroll is actually a brilliant way of doing it. The footnotes on bottom will give you more information, but they set it up like that. I'm just teaching you how to do it. I'm telling you, you'll see you can do it on your own. But if you don't, that's the fear. The confusion comes about. Let's go back to the text. I'm going to read the first words. I'm just going to translate them. Let's assume that you know Hebrew and Aramaic. The words are Pashat, he took off. I'm sorry, do you see where it says Mem Saf Nun here, folks? I'll do Gemara talk, okay? 1 second. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, we're on Lamed Aleph Amud Beis. We're on Lamed Aleph Amud Beis in the Gemara, 8 lines from the top. Okay, you got it? Everybody good? If you have a question, ask me. You good? Okay, so that box says Mem Saf Nun, that's actually a Mishnah. The way the Gemara is written out is we mention a Mishnah, and then there's a lot of Gemara talk about the Mishnah. Okay, so the Mishnah, I may not have mentioned that earlier. I'm sorry. If I didn't, I don't think I mentioned this. I'm sorry. I really missed some carpet information. The first generation that wrote stuff down, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi's generation, were called Tanaim, and they wrote only the Mishnah, and later generations added the Gemara to it. I'm sorry, that's really important. So we're only learning a Mishnah now, but these rules go for Gemara as well. So that's why a Mishnah is found in the middle of Gemara. And I really did not explain that. How do you like that? So a Mishnah, this piece of text in the Gemara, it's, I used to always compare it to constitutional law. When I taught my students, my 8th grade students, I taught it like constitutional law, because what happens, just like you have, let's say, I'm going to get into trouble here. I don't know if I should be mentioning it down here, but you have this Second Amendment thing that's very popular here down in Texas.
It's from God, no?
What?
It's from God.
It's from God, absolutely. Yeah, you got to get the shotgun off the back of your pickup. Okay, so the Second Amendment, the Second Amendment, the folks who founded this great country came up with the Mishnah, right? The text for all that will follow. Now, when it says you have the right to bear arms, what does it mean? Does it mean that you have a right to keep a gun at home because you're part of the local militia, which is really what it was written for at the time? Or does it mean that you're allowed to have an AK-15, which is what we're talking about today? So, in order to make Gemara relevant to my students, I always framed it like the Constitution. So you have a body of knowledge, and scholars nitpick in a respectful way, what exactly did they mean by that? Because it's impossible to create a text of instructions that will carry on in America here. We're 240 years into this experiment, and thank God we have judges that do this, and that's the way it works. So the Mishnah is like the Constitution, and then the Gemara talks about, well, what did he mean? But if the equivalent would be that you have the right to bear arms, the Second Amendment, and then the Gemara would talk about it, and Rashi and Tosfos would argue on the interpretation of the Gemara. That's really how it works. So let's go through the words. I'm running a little late. Let's just go through the words. So here are the words. Pashat, he took off. Yarad, he went down. V'taval, and he immersed himself. Allah, he got up. Nistapik, he dried himself. Heviu lo, they brought to him, big day zahav, his golden clothing. V'lavash, he dressed. V'kidash, and he made holy. Yadav, his hands. V'raglav, and his feet. Okay? So this is the literal translation of the Gemara. Now, if you don't have anybody whispering next to you, you know what the words mean, but you have no, you can translate the words, but you have absolutely, like if you took a Hebrew dictionary, you'd be fine. You could say what I said just now, but what the heck is it talking about? So for context, we look at the top here. It says on the top line, right here in the actual Gemara, it says Perek Shlishi, it's the third chapter, and it says Yuma. Yuma is the day. When we know now it's talking about Yom Kippur. And Amra Lehem Hamamuna, those words are the first words of the chapter. In Gemara, it doesn't necessarily work about the topic, it's rather just the first few words. That's how a chapter is referred to. Now, let's go back to the other side and let's learn some whispers, okay? And let's go to the background information. You know what? Let's do this simultaneously, so we'll save a little time. Take out 2 pages now, please. You got the second side of the second page of the handout, Beis Amud Beis, right? And then you have this tablet here, the one that's sideways, the only one that's in landscape, is actually a worksheet made by our rockstar 4th grade Rebbe, who made an Artscroll for this type of whispers for the students. And on side 1, on the landscape side here, you see the just Hebrew whispers, and then on the back he wrote up really everything the kids need to know. So he went really further than Artscroll and really explained all of it. So let's quickly go. Let me give you some background information. So we're talking about the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. There were all the folks who worked in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Holy Temple, were descendants of Aharon HaKohen. Yaakov Avinu had 12 sons. One of those sons was Levi. Everybody from that tribe, all descendants, myself included, is referred to as a Levi and get the second Aliyah on Shabbos. So Leviim, plural, are folks from descendants of Levi. Aharon was a grandson of Levi, and he was designated by God to be the high priest, to actually serve. So Leviim was support staff. So if I was around in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, we'd be doing a lot of singing, singing that was involved with the temple, along with the service, with the karbanos and everything. And but the actual work was only done by Kohanim. A Kohen was a descendant of Aharon. Every generation, or every time, a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, was selected. I'm not going to go through how they were selected, but there was a high priest selected. Aharon himself was the first Kohen Gadol, the high priest, the big Kohen, so to speak. All Kohanim wore 4 garments. Okay, they had like shorts, so long shorts, like down past their knees. That was the undergarment. Then they wore like a long robe, like the Mediterranean style, that long flowing robe that also went down to the knees. It was white, made out of linen. They had a belt, like a gartel, you see, so, like in today's Hasidim wear this gartel, or you see on a kittel, you have like a little, they had a long belt that was wrapped around, and they wore a hat. So there was no gold in their clothing. It was very simple, 4 garments. Now, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, had an additional 4 garments that had gold in it. There was a breastplate. He had a plate on his head that said Kodesh Lashem, holy for God. And there were a few other garments that he wore. There was a choshen, an ephod. But the important part for this page of Mishnah is that there was gold in the Kohen Gadol's clothing. Now, all year long, you see a lot of whispers here. If you look in an Artscroll Gemara, it'll all be there in the introduction. Introduction to the chapter, maybe introduction to the beginning of the tractate of the Masechta, but everything I'm telling you now is there. And so you just work your way through it. They'll do a better job than me because they're not rushing. So they're not on the clock. But you'll get every single thing that I'm telling you, you'll get in the introduction to the various components of this. So all year long there was a rotation system where all the Kohanim, all the descendants of Aharon, did all the jobs and all the service of the temple, of the Beis HaMikdash. On Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol was the only one who did stuff. He did everything. So he brought the morning sacrifice, he did some other things. Everything that was done by the Kohen Gadol. Now, there was a little problem. The first time the Jews as a people, as a nation, got gold, what happened with that one? What? They messed it up. What did they do? They built the golden calf. So the first time the Jewish tradition, in our history, the word gold doesn't always bring up, it's like you're having this stuff, you're having a little discussion with your wife, or, and you have these certain hot button topics that is not a good idea to bring up, or don't mention certain words, because that's a code word for something where you forgot you messed up. True story, our oldest daughter Leah, I didn't bring flowers. I don't know, I should have, but I wasn't into flowers much. I think I was a pretty good husband, but still am. But I wasn't really into the flower thing. So one Friday, I came home with a big bouquet of flowers for my wife. True story. I walked into the house. Our oldest daughter Leah sees me. I said, "Look what I brought for Mommy." I promise. She said, just like this. She said, "That bad, huh?" No, my son. She said, "That bad, huh?" And she was right. So there's certain things. You all know that you're living together long enough. There's certain stuff you don't bring up. So on Yom Kippur, when we're standing before God and asking for forgiveness, gold is not a thing we want to talk about. Okay, because that could conjure up the first time we got our hands on some gold. Okay, so the Kohen Gadol had gold in his garments. So when he did weekday stuff, the morning there were brackets in the services. There was every single day there was a sacrifice in the morning before everything, and a sacrifice at night to end it all. That was done by regular Kohanim, but the Kohen Gadol had to do everything. So the rule for the day is that every time he does a daily sacrifice or any work daily, he would wear his he would wear the full suit, the Bekesh and the Strammel, right? For the third time, Rabbi, what is it, the third time, the fourth time in Plano? Third. We're working on that. Okay? So he wore the Bekesh and the Strammel. He wore all the gold and everything. And when he did a service that was designed for Yom Kippur, there was certain incense that was brought in, certain karbanos. So that stuff, no gold. So he wound up having to get dressed and undressed, changing his clothing 5 times during the day. Every time he did it, he immersed in the mikveh 5 times during the day. And every time he got out, they had a partition. He would go to the mikveh, dry himself, put on his clothing, and then go do the service. So this is the first time that he came. So if you look here, let's just do the Hebrew the way Rebbe did here, the way not Rebbe of the Mishnah, our Rebbe here. So let's start from here. Pashat, he took off Big Dechol. He took off his weekday clothing, Atzmo, his own personal clothing, whatever he wore to come there. Yarad v'tovel, he went down and he toveled. So Rebbe wrote here, Sharamayim, this is the place that he immersed himself, and this is tefillah number 1. This is the first time he immersed himself in the mikveh that day. Olav in a stapik, he got out and he dried. Hevielo big dezov, they brought him his gold clothing. Obviously, what was he doing next? What type of work was he doing? A daily one, because he was wearing gold, right? So he came with the street clothes, he put on gold clothing, because he had to bring the first sacrifice of the day. The lavash, and he did it. Big Dezov number 1, first time he's wearing golden clothing for the day. V'ki deshadav v'raglav, this was the first time that he washed his hands and his feet. Min hakiton shel zav. Folks, I'm sorry if you're my Facebook friends, if you look on today, I posted all 6 pages of the handouts. I think I should have mentioned that earlier. So he did that. My apologies. And he did that min hakiton shel zahav. Okay, so Rebbe gave. Now, if you look on the back of what my Rebbe did, he really went through all of it. You see, he started Pashat, he undressed the big Dechol, he went down to the mikveh and did tefillah. You see, and then he goes through all of the details. I really want to go through this Artscroll piece because my Rebbe didn't do sheets on all of the Mishnah. This is what it's going to look like when you go to the Mishnah, when you read inside. So here, the Mishnah. Again, we're on, I think, Beis Amud Beis in our handout, right? The second side of page page 2. The Mishnah continues this description of the Yom Kippur service. Pashat Yared V'Tavel. So here, in brackets, it's who it was. See, are you following, folks? If you don't know, let me know, please. Yeah? Okay, I don't seem to have the right page. Okay, Pashat Yared V'Tavel. He took off the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, undressed, descended with, it doesn't say, now into the mikveh is a whisper, because it doesn't translate any word from the Gemara. So he's whispering in your ear. He descended where? He descended into the mikveh. Immersed, which means taval. Olav in a stapik, he got up and dried himself. Heviula big dezov, they brought the gold investments. You see in parentheses, a whisper, all 8, including the gold stuff. And he donned them. V'kiddush yadav raglav, he sanctified his hands and feet. Finished. Guys, you know what to do. That's it. So, that's really it. That's it. Now you go explore. I took out the mystery. I have two more things. And if you look to your handout, the original page 1 of the handout, I just want to share a few things with you. But honest to goodness, it's a long journey, but you have everything you need to get started. If you pick up start with Mishnah, only Mishnah. Artscroll does the exact same thing for Mishnah. Don't get into Gemara, I would say, for at least a few months. But just learn the Mishnah, because Mishnah is the Constitution. It's simple. It just says, you have the right to bear arms. The Gemara goes through a lot of stuff. So start with Mishnah, read the introductions. I kid you not, you're good to go. Let me just look on the bottom of the page. I just want to talk very quickly a few things. Now, look at 7. Number 7, that Q&A, I think we're going to have to leave for a different time. Next time you invite me back here. So, I want to just mention 3 quick things. One of them I discussed already. The children who are learning Gemara, if the objective is to learn yourself, you're really fine. But this might be helpful even if you're learning yourself. So back to the story I started with before I turned on the Facebook thing. So I was doing this class to a group of single mothers, and a mom, a Hasidish mom, raised her hand, and she said in Yiddish, she asked me, what's all this talk about the oxen? My son picks up the phone every day and learns with his chavrus, his study partner. They were learning Nezikin, a different Seder, the tort law section, and a lot of it has to do with damages. So it talks, the ox did this, the ox did that, and the mother, being the driver of the carpet car, said, "Was ist das so interessant wegen an ox? What's so interesting about an ox? They all look the same." My son gets on the phone, 45 minutes, every single night, the ox did this, the ox did this, the ox did that. What's going on? What's with the ox? So, what I answered her, and here's where you can be an extraordinary resource to your children and really have them loving studying with you. So I told her, this is what I answered her right away. I said, okay, you go shopping in Monroe. She lives in Monroe, New York. I said, you go shopping at a local store and you fill up your cart with stuff, call a car service to come over, open the trunk, you put the bags in, the wagon rolls down an incline, rolls down the parking lot and smashes my headlight. You didn't push it, you just let go. If you pushed it, of course you'd be responsible for damages. How about if you just let go and let gravity take over? I didn't do it, I just let go. And now, what would happen if it was a windy day? Would you be more or less likely to be responsible? Now you're going to say, it just blew so hard, I didn't have it's not my fault. And I'll say, you knew it was a windy day, it's worse than a regular day. You knew it's going to go crazy once it lets go, you're responsible. Now how about if that wagon tipped over and a carton of eggs, I didn't hit my car, but a carton of eggs fell out? See, it sounds interesting, doesn't it? That's what I took. Yeah, right? Would you go? So I asked this woman this, okay? What happens if a carton of eggs fell out and some eggs went on the parking lot floor and I slipped and fell? So it was a secondary damage, right? So you're going to say, I let go, it fell over, come on, get a life. How, too bad. When does it end? And I'll say, that chain started because of you. Now you should have gone and cleaned it up. I didn't see. Too bad. You should look. It let go. So I told the woman, I see you're perking up. This is interesting stuff. So I asked this woman, would you go to a class if I gave a class on this stuff? She said, absolutely. It's fascinating. I said, that's what they're talking about. They didn't have parking lots and car services and trunks and wagons. They had oxen. and the ox, the parking lot, an ox in Yiddish is an ox, so, it sounds familiar. So what you do is, so the ox didn't stay in his parking space, right? So they went to the, right? So imagine if you had cars moving on their own. So what they're talking about is tort law. It's the same rules. They're talking about this. Listen what the woman asked me. She looks at me and she says, Rabbi Horowitz, when my son's Rebbe learns with my son, does he make it interesting like you did with the wagons or does he just talk about oxen? So I said, I hope he's doing wagons, and if he came to one of my classes that I give to Rebbeim on teaching Gemara, he will do that. But if he's not, you just became his best chavrusa, his study partner, because you're gonna cheat. You're gonna ask him. First, you'll blow him away. If you say, "What? You're doing daf lamed beis amud beis?" You start off with him. Say, "What daf are you learning, huh?" You talk carpet, and when you find out what he's learning, you take that and you see they're talking about stuff that was 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Make wagons out of it. And when your son comes home for dinner, say, I had this interesting thing. I just let go of my wagon. And if they're talking about secondaries at Tzroiris, is like, the example, Tzroiris it's called, which means splinters or like, if an axe trampled or a person tramples on a let's say a bottle, a glass or something, and splinters fall out, little pieces, shards fall out and hurt. Are you responsible? And that breaks something. Are you responsible for damages? It's the same. Have this discussion with him. He'll be eating out of your hands, because when you come home, you're going to give him everything he needs to know. Rabbi, I know we need to go. When I was in Neve Daniel for Shabbat about a year ago, I stayed in the Goldstein's home. Jenny Goldstein is a therapist, and her husband's a very big Talmud Chacham. They have adorable children. Their son recently made videos that I beg you all to watch. You will absolutely pass out laughing once you understand the words. Now, you might need somebody to explain what he's saying. He did exactly what I did in my classroom. Exactly, but he did it better. What he did is, he took football videos and he taught Gemara using those principles. So in Shabbos, for example, in order to be responsible for carrying on Shabbos, you have to 3 actions. You pick it up, you have to, let's say you pick it up in your house, take it out to the public domain if there's no South Erev, and you put it down. Those are the 3 actions that you have to do. It's called an akira, haitzah, hanacha. Pick up, put out, and put down. Now, that would be the text of the Constitution. That would be in the Mishnah. So the Gemara asks another interesting question. How about if I didn't, what happens if I didn't go outside? How about if I'm inside my house and I stretch my hand out and I drop it? Would I be responsible? I didn't put it down. In the Constitution, it says you have to put in the Gemara. Mishnah, it says you have to make an akira, a pickup, outside, and a hanacha. What if he didn't make an? What if somebody took it from him? He had 2 partners. This is what the Mishnah discusses in Shabbos. Okay, so what I would do always when I would teach this to my class, if you look at the last page of your handout, look at the State Line Journal. This is a clip from the New York Times. I put up something like this every day in my classroom to make this discussion relevant. There's a part in Makos, in Gemara Makos, that I would teach my students that talks about boundaries. And if you have a tree, an accidental murderer, Ratzeach B'Shogeg, goes to an Ir Miklat, a city of refuge, and he's protected inside the borders. The Mishnah goes through, I used to hate teaching it because the kids used to roll their eyes and say, oh, another thing that happens every day. So you have a tree, the roots are inside, the trunk is inside, the branches are outside, the guy's sitting in the branches, the accidental murderer is sitting in the branches having a latte, espresso, or whatever it is, and this guy comes by, is he allowed to kill him? He says, hey, I'm part of a tree that's inside. It's an extension. I promise. And then the Gemara talks about it the other way. Until I started the first couple of years, it was like, I used to walk in there like dreading it. The kids, this is what I try to create the environment that they could ask any question they want. What do you think they started around here? Oh, another thing. Hey, Rebbe, this is good. This is important to learn. So what I would do is I would take a picture of a football player with his feet inside the field and catching the ball outside. Okay, and there's a different set of halachas, if we can talk it. When you hit the end zone, it's not by catching the football, it's where your feet are. And by the end zone, if your feet are in bounds and you stick it in, you break the plane, it's called, you don't have to put it down even. If it breaks the plane, you get a touchdown. So I used to put those rules up on the board, and then we would do the Gemara. The kids loved it.
Some of these referees have to learn better Gemara.
Some of the referees should learn Gemara. But by the way, if you look at the discussion about catching and bringing it to the ground, right? That's the biggest machlaikas.
Oh, God.
This is the biggest machlaikas in football because it says the rule book says, if you follow sports, the rule book says you have to catch it.
My language, Rabbi.
Now you're talking. I should have started with that. Wouldn't you love to be in my class? Wouldn't you come to my Gemara?
We started football Gemara class.
So you got it, a football Gemara class. You must pick up these videos. Rabbi, can I make a suggestion, Rabbi? Do a share, bring this video in and explain what the kids are talking about.
Sure. How do I find the video?
I'll send them to you. Send them to the group. So what this guy does is, Julio Jones is a receiver. He made an acrobatic catch in a game. Now, I don't know about it, by the way. I just saw it in the airport. Somebody told me. All right, so he has his tippy toes inside, and he makes this acrobatic catch. The player's name is Julio Jones, and he's talking about Hilchos Shabbos. So he says, Julio Jones makes an akira. He makes a hanacha. He puts it down in the thing, and he uses absolute Gemara talk. And he brings in Shritus. He has one on the Mishnah about secondary damages, about a penalty. He did an accidental. He hit the guy accidentally with his helmet. Is he chayiv? Is he pater? It is absolutely hysterical, and you get the creativity. This guy did. This is exactly what I did in my classroom, but his videos have thousands and thousands of views because he got it. So, Rabbi, we get somebody in here to give y'all some Gemara football. So look up the videos. I hope you found this helpful, everyone, and it's so delightful spending Shabbos with you.
AK-47.
AK-47.